Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer, Republican candidate for governor, a fourth generation Coloradan, former Weld County commissioner, and member of the powerful Joint Budget Committee. Well, Senator Kirkmeyer, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, Senator, why did you decide to run for governor?
Brandon, this is my state. You heard I'm fourth generation Coloradoan, and I just, quite frankly, I get ticked off. I'm ticked off at the way our state is running. One party control for definitely for the last 7 years has just made a mess out of our state. We are unaffordable, we're unsafe, we're quite frankly, we're just unraveling. But again, there's just so much going wrong. I mean, we've increased taxes, things that have gone wrong with regard to, our roads need to be fixed. I mean, it's just everything. Healthcare, the access to healthcare has been greatly jeopardized just even in the last few years. But so I got ticked off and decided that I'm going to go save my state, that I'm going to go work for the people that I've always worked for, always been able to deliver in Colorado. And that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I have six grandsons. They'd be sixth generation Coloradoans. And, I grew up poor on a farm in North Jefferson, dairy farm on North Jefferson County. So I know what it's like to go without. I know what it's like to have to go work for everything you get. I worked my way through college. And so I'm upset. I'm frustrated with the way that our state has been operating for several years now. And it's not just me. There are a lot of people who just think we're on the wrong track and going the wrong way, and so it's time. It's time that we have a governor who actually knows how to govern and who truly believes that our best days are ahead of us.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people across Colorado who feel the same way. We see the headlines, Colorado ranking first in crime, regulations. We see the homelessness down in Denver. We see things going totally the wrong way. So I think a lot of people share that viewpoint of we got to get back on track. We got to have a better future for ourselves and our families for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, during the last election for governor in 2022, Jared Polis beat the Republican challenger Heidi Ganahl by nearly 500,000 votes. How can a Republican win in Colorado?
It's going to take a lot of work. But I think if you've just even been watching some of the recent polling that have been coming out in the news, we're seeing that unaffiliated voters, like close to 60% of unaffiliated voters they're saying, look, things are just off the rails here. We're going the wrong way. It's way too expensive in this state. We're worried about whether or not our kids will be able to afford a house. Heck, we're worried if we can afford a house and, live here in this state. I mean, we can't even afford the price of eggs, basically, at some points. So I think, again, I'm just going to go back to who I am. I've got a great story. I've worked with people. I go out and I do a lot of door to door knocking, just like you do. And, that's where you get to know what's going on in the communities. I plan on doing that a lot as I do my race for governor as well. But it's a great way to find out what's going on in the communities, to touch base with people. And, for me, to get out from underneath that golden bubble down there at the Capitol, as a state senator, sometimes you get down there and if you don't get out and start talking to folks, you lose perspective. But again, I just think it's my background, who I am, that I'm a lifelong Coloradoan. People know me as a fighter, as somebody who also listens, leads, and then actually just gets stuff done. My record is very solid. I've been able to reduce property taxes both as a county commissioner. I led my county to zero debt as a county commissioner, reduced the property taxes, and even within the state of Colorado, been able to get the largest property tax reduction in the state's history as a member of the minority. So I'm just going to go out and tell that story. I'm going to talk to folks, listen to what they have to say, and let them know that I have a plan to lead, a plan to actually govern in this state and move us forward and get us going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think your experience is phenomenal. I mean, you have probably the most experience in terms of the political arena out of any of the candidates that I've seen, at least in terms of, being a county commissioner, being in the legislature, the Joint Budget Committee. You probably understand the budget better than most people, I would say, and understand kind of what the rural lifestyle is like as well as what it's like down in Denver, being down there so often for the legislature.
Exactly. I get some criticism from folks, even some of my opponents in this race, who, there's quite a few of them, and I like the one. I don't know everybody that well, but the ones that I've gotten to know, I really do like. And it's we're gonna have a fun race. Let's go get our message out to everybody. But you're right, and you know. Not only did I grow up on a farm, I owned a farm. Owned a dairy farm and ran a dairy farm, and also ran a small business for 15 years with my sister up in Fort Collins. So I've got that background as well. But I get folks who, like my opponents, who will say that, oh, she's a career politician. And I don't always say this out loud, but I do ask them every once in a while. I said, let me get this straight. We're basically in a job interview here, and I'm thinking people want to hire the person with the most experience and the best experience, and has proven that they can get the job done. But I said, just in your case, if you were supposed to have brain surgery, would you go hire a dentist or would you go hire a brain surgeon? And they just looked at me and said, so I think it's the same way when you're running for office. If you're running for office and you're saying you want to be the leader in this state and govern and go the Colorado way and get us back to being affordable and not and safe and fix our roads and all of those things, are you going to hire somebody who knows what they're doing? Are you going to hire somebody who says, yeah, I think I can? I'm a good person and that's great, but I think I can. Are you going to hire somebody with the most experience? And I would say, let's go for the person with the most experience so we can go in day one, hit the ground running, and just get the job done. Go to work for the people of the state of Colorado and get the job done.
Yeah, I mean that's a very compelling argument for sure. You touched on a variety of some of the issues focus that a lot of Coloradans are focused on, some of the issues in our communities. But what would you say are your top issues that specifically you're really focusing on during your campaign?
It's going to be about let's bring back affordability. It's not just about attainable housing, but that's extremely important at the top of the list. But there have been so many poor policies that have been passed, specifically in the last 7 years. Again, one party control. They control the House, the Senate, and the governor's chamber, and they've passed policies that have increased regulations. I mean, we are the sixth most regulated state in the nation. So we need to cut that red tape, which will help us cut taxes. And we need to continue cutting more taxes wherever we can. And all of these fees that have been piled on to individuals. I mean, I don't know if you've recently had to go in and get a new registration for your vehicles, but my gosh, the list, I mean, it adds on like another 40% to your cost to register your motor vehicle registration. All these fees that are added on. So it's things like that. So I'm going to work on the affordability and piece, the access to healthcare, trying to figure out how do we get our insurance premiums lowered. Been working with some insurance folks to start talking about how do we do that. So the affordability piece. And then it's the part where we're so unsafe. I mean, first, second, or third, I mean, depending on which week or who you're talking to, but first or second or third most dangerous state in the nation. We weren't that way 7 years ago. We were not that way 7 years ago. So this one party control again has just led us to be, where people just don't feel safe in their communities. And I think, again, those are huge issues for everybody that we need to deal with. And, there are things that we could do. There are things that you can do as a governor to work to make us more safe. One of the things that I did as a state senator just in the last year is I passed the bill that will bring about $35 million for the next 10 years to fund local law enforcement, to fund the police, not defund the police, but to fund the police. So 35 million a year for the next 10 years. And it's for, recruitment, retention, and training of local law enforcement officials. That's a bill that I passed. So again, public safety is a huge issue and something that I have worked on and will continue to work on in the future. And there's so much more there. I mean, the cashless bonds, the fact that there are things like fentanyl, methane, cocaine, and heroin that you can possess up to a gram of each of those major drugs. And you can have those in your possession and it's only a misdemeanor. Like it's almost really literally like a slap on the wrist. And that's if you get caught. So, there's things like that that we can do in the public safety world. And then, the roads. I'm telling you, as I'm out talking to folks, especially like in rural Colorado, it's the roads. They're like, could you just get our roads fixed? And that's, I've got years of experience working on as the chair of the State Transportation Advisory Committee, but this North I-25 project where we're getting improvements to I-25 was a project that I've pushed as well. So Again, we need to fix our roads, make our communities safer, and then it's our education system. We need to strengthen our school system and get back to where, teachers teach and parents parent. And it's not the other way around. Parents can do their teaching as well at home, but parents need to be the parents of their kids and determine what is the best opportunity for their children, educational opportunity for their children. And, we need to have a school system that is teaching our kids how to read by the third grade, and how to be able to do math in the eighth grade by the eighth grade kind of thing. And we're failing at that. And so we need more accountability in our schools, protect our kids in our schools as well. And those are the things that I'll be working on as a governor.
Wow, yeah, I think you hit on some really important issues that really affect everybody across the state, especially in the Denver
Mhm.
metro area. Affordability. I've been out talking to people for my little city council campaign up here, and that's the number one issue for sure. People are struggling to get by. People are trying to figure out how to pay their bills. People are just trying to make ends meet, and the
And
government has just made it so hard.
they have. And then think about small businesses. We just had a special session about 8 weeks ago where, we were supposed to be cutting the budget. We didn't have any opportunity to do that again because Governor Polis puts out this call and says, "Oh no, the only opportunity you're going to get to do is increase taxes." So we spent 6 days increasing taxes on small businesses, attempting to balance the budget on the backs of small businesses. That's ridiculous. And that's just making things even that much more unaffordable for everyone.
100% completely agree with that. And I have this vision too. I think, probably share the same vision of a Colorado where you could like, leave your car doors unlocked. You don't have to worry about somebody stealing your car. You don't have to worry about locking your front door. Your garage is up overnight. It's not a big deal because crime is so low, right? Kids can go play in the streets without fear. People can afford to have a house. People can afford to make ends meet, live a relatively comfortable lifestyle, and I think that's so important to really have this vision of what Colorado could be like. If we got the government out of our way, if we let small businesses thrive and provide better jobs and better little businesses in our community. I know people love going to small businesses and local businesses instead of the big box stores, which seem to have taken over so many little corners of Colorado. But what
Sure.
but painting that picture, that kind of vision of what Colorado could be for people, I just think is so important to know that we could live in a safe community. It doesn't have to be this way, right? It doesn't have to be the way that we're seeing right now. We could be safe. We could have great little local businesses. People could have good paying
Yeah.
jobs, and we just got to get the government out of the way for the most part, and then do their job of keep making sure the roads are good and the criminals are locked up, and that's really it, right?
For the most part, yes, it is. And lowering our taxes, and stop with all the fees and that type of thing. But you're exactly right. And here's the other thing that's going on in this state that has just grown over the last 7 years is that divide between urban, the city folks and agriculture. And this governor and his administration and just him personally have really, widened that gap, widened that divide. And on top of it all, he's also gone in and destroyed like our energy economy. We have three economies in the state that are our top state, that are our top in our state. It's the energy economy, so it's oil and gas, and it's agriculture, and then it's tourism. And he's done his best over the last 7 years, along with this General Assembly, this legislature. Again, this single party control stuff that we have going on in the state. They've done their best to eliminate oil and gas from the state, and then also to go after agriculture. I mean, look what's going on throughout the state with the wolves, for example. I mean, this is a governor. Is he just tone deaf? And he's not listening to what's going on because his department's not doing a very good job. They basically tell people that they're just going to go do whatever they want to do anyways and not follow the plan. That's just wrong. And then you look out in the agricultural world, and I was out in Prowers County a couple of weeks ago, and folks are just the ranching and farming community is like, what's with the meat out day? We have a $47 billion industry in this state. And, we know Weld County. I mean, Weld County, but a $47 billion industry. We're like, Weld County is something like seventh or something in the nation in agricultural counties, but our whole Eastern Plains and our Western Slope, it's their livelihood, and here's the governor saying, yeah, stop buying meat, stop eating meat. And it's like, what are you doing? Kind of thing. So I think with my agricultural background, not only growing up on a dairy farm, but owning a dairy farm, being a county commissioner in the number one agricultural county in the state, I think I will be able to help bridge that divide and really, because I have an understanding of what it takes to be in the agricultural industry, to live in rural Colorado. I still live in the unincorporated part of Weld County. I don't live in town anywhere. Not that that's a bad thing or anything, but I just don't. And so I think I will be able to also help bridge that divide as well and maybe bring us closer together as a state, and look out, be a governor that's a governor for everyone in the state, not just a select few like what we have right now.
Well, and I think there's, a dream for so many people who live in the suburbs or grew up in the suburbs to kind of move to more rural areas, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
To kind of capture that Colorado lifestyle, to have some of your own livestock, your own food, some self-sufficiency. And it just seems, at least online or some of the people I talk to, so many young people have this dream of like, oh, I wish I could have a little farm. I wish I could just build my house out in the country and kind of get away from the busy noise of the city. And it seems like so many of the policies from our Democrat majority in the legislature and the governor are making it harder for people to do that.
They are, but they're just making it harder for even those folks who already live out in the rural parts of our state, even more difficult for them. I mean, Brendan, we have a serious issue with access to healthcare in the state. We have over 25 counties that have what's called a maternal health care desert. So, in other words, you cannot get maternal health care in 25 counties in the state of Colorado. We are not a third. Excuse me there. Um, we are not a third world country. So again, we have 25 counties that have maternal health care deserts in this state. We're not a third world country. We need to really look at how we have healthcare access, and it's happening out in our rural parts of the state. And what does Governor Polis do 2 days after the special session? He goes in and he cuts Medicaid provider rates. Now everybody's probably thinking, "Hey, I'm not on Medicaid," but about 1.2 million people in our state are on Medicaid. But when you cut Medicaid provider rates, that means those small rural hospitals are now saying, look, we can't afford to do maternal health care because it's so expensive. And the only way we cannot provide that is to cut it completely. So what happens is they cut Medicaid provider rates. A rural hospital, or it's not even rural hospitals at this point, but let's just say a hospital has half of their provider rates, half of their payer mix is from Medicaid. Now they've got to start shutting down things. That impacts everyone in the community. So imagine being in a rural community where the governor says, "Yeah, I'm going to cut the Medicaid provider rates. I'm going to cut rural healthcare dollars that I went and got to go out to rural Colorado." But he says he's going to cut all those things, and you already know you don't have maternal health care. Imagine, where are you supposed to go to have your babies if you're a woman? What if something's going on and you need immediate care and you've got to drive 3 hours to get to that kind of care? That's ridiculous. And the governor is just like kind of sidestepping and not paying attention what's going on in all of the state. And I just think, quite frankly, I think that's appalling that he would do that. But here's also what's happening on that. When he cut those Medicaid provider rates, within 2 weeks, we had a hospital right here along the Front Range who closed their emergency center and their inpatient services because their payer mix is so high with Medicaid that now it's impacting the rest of their hospital services. So that means people in the Loveland area, for example, now have one less hospital to go to for emergency care. That's what's going on. So it doesn't just impact the people who are on Medicaid, which is an insurance, it's impacting everyone in this state access to health care. Those are things that we need to work on as well.
Wow. Yeah, no, definitely an
Yeah.
important issue for people out there for sure. How are they going to get their health care? How are they going to get affordable medical care if they need it, right?
Yeah.
Senator, we talked a little bit about your background and your experience, but what else would you say differentiates you from other Republicans in the governor's race?
I think the greatest thing is this is that, again, one, I'm a mom and I'm a grandmother. Everyone has their story. I grew up poor. I know what it's like to have to go fight for everything you get. And that experience does pay off. I mean, I'm really working towards how do we govern? It's not just about the race. It's not just about winning. As you know, I mean, you're in a race and you're already thinking, what am I going to do as a city council member? And I think we have a lot of people in this race that are like, it's just about the race. We just got to figure out how to win and get in there. And, I'm just going to use an example of President Trump. His first go around as president, it was about the race and about getting in there and winning. And then it took him a while to figure out everything they needed to do and that he needed to do. His second go around, he hit the ground running and it's made a huge difference. I mean, he lowered taxes on overtime, taxes on tip. He reduced taxes for everybody through HR 1. The things that he's been able to accomplish because of the experience that he had and the knowledge that he had of how government works. But he ran in this race knowing that, you know what, I need to know how to govern. I need to have a message, not just to win, but a message that says we're going to govern and we're going to hit the ground running. I think that's the difference between myself and all of the other candidates, whether they're Democrat or Republican in this race. I think that's the huge difference between myself. That experience that I have, not just in, serving the people and delivering for the people in the state of Colorado, but my small business background, my agricultural background, and then the fact that I'm a mom. It's amazing to me, Brandon, in the legislature, there are several people that have never been a parent, that have never, I mean, there's only 6 people who have owned a small business and have a business background out of 100. But but think about it, when they don't have those experiences and then they're trying to pass policies that impact people where they don't have a clue. I mean, we've had some horrible legislation where I call it like the war on parents, and the people carrying it, they don't have any kids. And it's like, this is why they think it's okay. Government's not supposed to be raising our kids. But I kind of digress there. But, I think it's the fact that the experience that I've had, but not only is it experience like passing policy and legislation, it's actually experience in how to govern, how to run a local government, a county, and that's going to be very similar to how do you run a state. And one of the other experiences I have is I worked for Governor Bill Owens, eventually becoming the executive director of the Department of Local Affairs. So I have a very good understanding of how state government works and where we can go do tremendous things and get stuff done, regardless if the legislature is on my side or not. There's still a lot that a governor can do to get a lot of things accomplished and get stuff done for the people of Colorado. So that's what I think the greatest difference is. I'm going to rely on that experience. I already know how to govern. I will take that experience, continue to do what I've been doing, getting stuff done, getting things done for the state of Colorado and delivering, and make sure that we do have our best days ahead of us.
You brought up some great points there, and I've seen it, in the short time I've been involved in politics. Well, I mean, it's been a little bit of time, but at the same time, you get these legislators, city council members, you get people all across the political spectrum who get elected, and they really are like deer in the headlights. And all of a sudden, the city staff's telling them what they should do, and they're like, "Oh, I guess we should just go along with it," not knowing the effects of the policy. Or down at the state legislature, and gosh, you get elected, and then you have just a couple weeks to get your bills put together. And that first year down there, these legislators are like, "Oh my gosh, what do we do?" They don't have the experience, they don't have the information to really be as effective probably as they could be, until they're there after a cycle or two, really after a year or two, to really understand how the system works and how to actually play the game, if you will. So I think that's an important point that you brought up there, because I've seen it so often where you have these good intentioned candidates, right, who are like they seem so great and are awesome. They get in there and they're like, whoa, I don't know the first thing about how the city operates, how the state legislature operates, how the county operates, and they're just like paralyzed almost, and just
Yeah.
whatever staff tells them to do, or the whoever tells them to do it, they just go along with it because they just don't know any better, almost to no fault of their own. But at the same time, so I think that's a really good point, and I don't see
Mhm.
that point brought up a lot in politics. I really wanted to emphasize on that.
Well, and I'm going to give you one other example. We were in a forum with some of my opponents in this race, and one of them said that they could cut $10 billion out of the budget like that. And I'm looking at them thinking, no, you can't. So they're making a promise essentially that they won't be able to keep just because they're ignorant to the way that, or maybe naive, or they just don't have the experience to know about how that works. I've heard other opponents say, oh, as governor, I'm going to do this with the budget and this with the budget. And you know what? The governor gets to do one thing. He gets to, well, two things. He gets to present a budget and present what he thinks should be in the budget, or she, in my case. And then he can veto. He can't increase spending. He can't increase the amount of dollars that go to a certain line item, but he can veto a line item. That's what the governor gets to do with the budget. And then he gets to administer that budget. He's the executive, right? So he doesn't get to do all these other things like I mean, they were just talking about all the things he could do in the budget. And I'm like, no, it's the legislative branch. It's the joint budget committee that I sit on that writes the budget. It's not the governor. He can veto the budget. That's what he can do. So it's things like that. And I think, gosh, they just don't know, but they're telling people they're going to do these things. I'm like, that's what ticks people off later. I mean, it ticks me off when somebody says, yeah, I'm going to go do this. And then they can't deliver. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't know. And it's
Right.
like, that's again, part of the difference.
Right. Well, I know we're running out of time here, so just very briefly, some quick little questions here. I want to make sure I have an opportunity to ask you these. But why is Colorado different? In 2024, we saw the rest of the country kind of move pretty far to the Republican side, right? The country went red. Trump won in a landslide victory. Colorado, we picked up a few seats, right? We picked up a congressional seat. We picked up 3 seats in the state house. Pueblo County flipped. We have a couple of victories to celebrate that way. But generally speaking, Colorado was kind of an outlier in terms of the rest of the country. Why was Colorado different? Why didn't it move to more to the Republican side as everybody else did?
Typically, Brandon, if you go back and look throughout the years, Colorado's like a year or two behind. Even like in recessions and things of that nature and recovery and things of that nature, we end up being just a little bit behind. I think too, here's one of the other victories you didn't mention that we worked on very stringently in Weld County. So in the 24 election, we flipped 5 seats in Weld County from Democrat to Republican. And we did that by going through and saying, look, I personally went out and helped recruit people to run in these races and recruited people like Carlos Barone out of Fort Lupton. He was on the Fort Lupton City Council, so he had that kind of experience. He had small business background as well. He has that experience. He knows about the energy industry, has that experience. Recruited him to run in that seat, so that we maintain that seat. And then we have, Ryan Gonzalez, Representative Ryan Gonzalez in the Evans, East Greeley area, who again, strong background on things, really a hard worker, fast learner kind of guy, listens to folks, went out and door knocked all over the place. We flipped that seat and he beat Representative Mary Young, who'd been in that seat for a few years, and he beat her because of his hard work, his dedication, and his message. He knew what his message was. He knew what he was going to go do as a legislator, and he has kept his promise. That guy's going to get reelected. And then we flipped the seat with Dan Woog. Representative Woog had won his seat, and then he lost his seat to a Democrat out of Boulder. Through the redistricting, his seat became less Republican and more Democrat. But again, went out, he knew what his message was, he had experience, he knew how to talk to people, he went out and did a lot of knocking on doors. We flipped that seat. Another seat that we flipped was the State Board of Education. We had a young woman, Yasmin Navarro. She lost her school board election in the Johnstown area, in that school district. But she came back and she won her a state board of education election. And now she's the vice chair. So that is 4 seats that we flipped. And then CD8, because we had everybody in Weld County working on the same page, giving a strong message, having the experience, knowing what they were going to do, and going out and saying, this is what I can do, and then delivering on that as they've gotten into these offices. Because we flipped the Senate seat with Scott Bright as well. And then we flipped CD8. So we flipped 5 seats, we kept all of our seats, and we turned Weld County red. And you do that by hard work, going out and actually knocking on doors and talking to people one-on-one, knowing what your message is, knowing what you're running on, knowing what's important to the people, and sticking to that message. And then the way you get reelected is coming through and delivering on what you said you were going to do. So keep that in mind. I know you've been out there giving your message to folks, but when you get there, remember what you told people you were going to do and then go get it done. And that's how you get reelected as well. So I think Colorado, we have come a long ways. Are we going to get every seat back in the 26th election? No, we're not. But I think it's clear that one party control for the last 7 years has led us into this unaffordable, unsafe, unraveling state that we're in. And even unaffiliates now are saying enough's enough. We have gone the wrong direction. Government is too much in our lives. They've caused this mess. We now are seeing it. And I think they're ready for a strong, common sense, no nonsense Republican who knows how to get the job done.
Awesome. Wow. Great closing statement there. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Any last words, any final words out there for people?
Just, this election is extremely important. And I know we say that to everyone, but I just couldn't reinforce that more this year. We have statewide offices that are up, like the governor's race that I am in. We have several, all of our state representatives are up for reelection or election. Half of our state senate is. This is an extremely important year. We can't afford another 8 years like the last 8 years. We just can't afford it in this state. Literally cannot afford it. And I mean, who doesn't want to be safe in their community? Let's get people in there who are going to not defund the police, but defend the police and fund them as we move forward and then fix our roads. But this is an important election. We need everyone engaged, just like in your election, Brandon. We've got to get people engaged. You need to understand how important it is. And if you don't vote, you're at fault. You're complicit in letting our state become unaffordable, letting our state become unsafe. You're complicit in that if you don't vote. So get out, vote, look at the candidates, realize who's going to be able to get the job done and what they're saying they want to do. Look beyond the photo opportunity or the 30-second ad, and really truly go out and get engaged and think about, how do we want our state to be in the next 20 years, in the next 50 years? Where do we want our state to be? Because for me, I want a state that, Coloradoans can thrive, live, and work in, that they can afford to live in, that, the best days are ahead of us, and that we're thinking about how do we build upon that for our next generation, because that's who we're governing for.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Senator. Best wishes. Good luck on your campaign. Please keep us up to date if there's any updates or anything with the legislature next year. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this, Brandon. You're great. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Take care.